Welcome back. The dollar has remained the dominant force in world economics for over 100 years, but that could be changing. A few weeks ago, Iran's President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad boldly proclaimed that the dollar has no economic value. Venezuela's Hugo Chavez similarly added that the empire of the dollar is crashing. The U.S. national debt has continued to increase by an average of $1.5 billion per day. That is more than $30,000 per citizen. It may not be a crisis yet, but due to large-scale tax cuts, economic cool-down, the invasion of Iraq, and anti-terrorism endeavors, a surplus in 2001 has abruptly turned into a $459 billion deficit. For now, that drop is allowing the U.S. economy to reap rewards. American products, from Caterpillar tractors to Boeing jumbo jets, are benefiting. But the dramatic surge in oil revenue, along with the weakening dollar, has sparked a rise in inflation in the Gulf states, hurting most those who have the least. In recent months, it has wiped out much of the gains from years of hard labor for the thousands of South Asian workers who recently rioted for better pay and working conditions in the United Arab Emirates. Well, joining us again are our guests in London, Mamdouh Salameh, an international oil expert and an energy consultant for the World Bank. In Washington, D.C., Tyson Slocum, the director of the Public Citizens Energy Program, and in Cairo, Judah Abdel Khalik, professor of economics at Cairo University. Judah Abdel Khalik, Hugo Chavez and Mahmoud Ahmadinejad's comments about the dollar, plus Chavez's willingness for OPEC members to utilize oil as a political tool. What do you make of all of that?
Well, first of all, there has been a trend of decline in the value of the American dollar. It's not a matter of this year or last year. It has been a trend all along. We all remember the big drop in the value of the oil back in the mid-80s, and now over the past 3 to 5 years, the dollar has been going down. Now, with regard to oil price is denominated in American dollar, and oil payments are made in American dollars, and which means that any decline in the value of the American dollar would mean that the real value of oil earnings is going to be less and less. So there is an incentive for the oil producers now to think about an alternative hedge against this decline in the price of oil. There has been talk about some countries shifting to the euro instead of the dollar. So I think for the immediate future, maybe the dollar will still be with us with regard to oil trade, but that situation is going to change. Now, about using oil as a political weapon, it is not far-fetched. It's not something that is new. As a matter of fact, the big powers such as the United States have always used economic might as a political weapon. And I do not deny this on countries like Venezuela and other oil producers. In fact, it's the question of national interest. And so I actually can understand and appreciate these calls for using a national resource, the most important national resource, to further the national interests of the nation. Of course, you may say, what about the interests of the world at large? Well, the interests of the world at large should also be safeguarded, but I think first priority should go to the national interest.
Mamdouh Salami, will the world's increasing dependence on oil just bring about further war and bloodshed in the future?
It will. You only have to look to Iraq to know what happens when there is oil. The invasion of Iraq was about oil, and all the troubles in the Middle East were about oil. Look at Nigeria, where there is conflict. It is about oil. Look at Venezuela. It is about oil. So wherever there is oil, there is the potential of conflict. Also, the conflict could come in a different way. The United States now is deploying huge forces in the Middle East. The United States is gradually becoming dependent on Middle East oil. So is China. So eventually, if there is a conflict over Taiwan, the Americans could impose an embargo on oil supplies from the Middle East to China. So wherever there is oil, there is conflict, and that will not change. It has not changed since the oil was discovered, and it will not change in the future.
Tyson Slocum, a big word that scares everybody is recession. Increasing oil prices and the weakening dollar, do you think that it will create a recession?
It could if these prices continue to persist at the current levels. And that's one reason why major countries in OPEC, like Saudi Arabia, don't want to see oil at this price for sustained periods of time, because Saudis realize that their economic future is tied in with the United States, or anyway, their leadership has made that decision. And that's why recently the United States Congress took some modest steps forward to try to address America's huge dependence on oil by significantly raising fuel economy standards of America's automobiles, so that new automobiles being sold in the United States will have to get better gas mileage, meaning that they'll use less oil. So that is definitely a very good step. And also the United States has been focusing on promoting alternative fuels, mainly agricultural fuels like ethanol. However, the United States has to do a heck of a lot more in terms of promoting other alternatives like electric cars, since 99% of electricity in the United States is generated from non-petroleum sources like nuclear and coal. And so and also heavily promoting mass transit, which is underfunded in the United States. So I do think that the United States is slowly beginning to recognize that it has to do something different from the way it has. And that was the step that Congress just made. And I also think that with a new administration succeeding the Bush administration, especially if we have a Democrat in office, I think you might see the prospects for improved ties with Venezuela and with furthering developments of alternative and renewable energies and energy efficiency, which are all going to be necessary.
Mamdouh Salame, with some of these energy alternatives, do some of them or most of them create more problems than solutions?
They do. First, let me be careful on this and be straightforward. Oil will be with us all through the 21st century, albeit at very high price, increasing price. Now, the alternatives, we are looking for transport fuel alternatives. There are the unconventional oil production like tar sand oil of Canada, shale oil, biofuels like ethanol. But these have limited potential despite the great hype in Western media about them. They have very limited potential. All of them, the unconventional oil production, will produce up to 6 to 7 million barrels by the year 2020 out of 117 million barrels a day that will be used worldwide. So the potential is very limited. But if you take ethanol in particular, because ethanol is being produced from corn in the United States, the price of corn has gone up through the sky, and the price of food materials and fish, and not fish, meat and chicken and everything, food materials prices in general have gone up. If you look at unconventional oil like tar sand oil, there is the environmental cost, which is causing a bit of trouble to Canada now in terms of water resources and in terms of the environmental
it sounds really fascinating. Sorry to interrupt you. It seems as if there are a host of problems that would come with alternative energy. Looking at that big picture again, Judah Abdel Khalik, do you foresee an era of new economic powers with a redrawing of the political map as a result of all this instability related to oil?
Yeah, I think so. I think this has been in the making for quite some time. Now, it looks like a big geopolitical game going on between countries like China on the one side and the United States on the other side. And when it comes to oil, you will see that China has been very careful to tap oil resources that are way beyond the control of the United States. They have gone mainly to Africa and to Latin America for that part, in addition to their domestic resources. So in the years to come, when the economic might of China will have increased, and in relative terms the economic might of the United States will have declined, we can see a reshaping of that. But I would like to say, in comment regarding producing oil from agricultural products, what we need is not looking for ways and means of increasing oil energy supplies, but perhaps rethinking the lifestyle and consumption patterns when it comes to oil. I think the United States is taxing the entire world, both in environmental and economic and political terms, by just going that far with regard to excessive energy consumption. And look at the Bush administration and its
Judah Abdel Khalik, I'm going to have to interrupt you because we don't have any time left on the program, but I think your point was made. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Mamdouh Salami, Tyson Slocum, and Judah Abdel Khalik. Thank you very much for joining us on Inside Story. And thank you so much, the viewer, for joining us on this edition of Inside Story. We welcome your comments and suggestions. There's it on your screen. Inside Story at aljazeera.net. Bye-bye for now.